This is Simon.
This is Becca.
This is Jordan.
This is the Facepalm Report.
Your source for news, politics, and pop culture, which is truly facepalm worthy.
I like big butts and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny. When a girl walks in with an itty bitty waist and a round thing in your face, you get sprung, you wanna pull up tongue.
What's the story with this introduction? This is not the usual sound that we have going here.
Oh, yeah. See, this is the cover of the Sir Mix-a-Lot song "Baby Got Back," done by geek rocker internet sensation Jonathan Coulton. Now, I'd like to make sure we mention his name plenty of times during this episode, because he was supposed to get exposure when the Fox Glee show stole his cover, like his arrangement, almost like pretty much note for note, even his edits, and ran with it. So I want to make sure that everyone knows Jonathan Coulton. We will definitely put his name and link in the show notes so you can know that he's the one who did this. But so today's show, we're going to deal with that bit, the Glee as the bully and what they did to Mr. Johnny C. Also on today's agenda is dealing with the House GOP spending money they say we don't have to defend the wrong side of history law of DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act. And we're also going to deal with the weird hypocrisy of a Catholic hospital claiming that a fetus isn't a person.
What?
What?
Yeah, we'll get to that. So, yeah, let's first start with Jonathan Coulton and Baby Got Back. So, here's what happened. So, as one of the things that Glee does now, I guess, I haven't been paying attention to them for a while, but they got back on our radar because what they do is before they have an episode, they'll release their songs on YouTube as like, hey, here's what to expect. Look at us. We're all pretty. So they released this cover of Baby Got Back, and the internet kind of does one of these, that sounds familiar. Where have I heard that before? Oh, yeah. It sounds pretty much exactly note for note of the cover that Jonathan Coulton did. Yeah, so they ripped him off hardcore. Like, not only did they take like his arrangement, the banjo arrangement, the singing, they even took his edits to the lyrics. Like, he says, this one, call up Johnny C, and there's no one in the Glee cast who could all claim that as their name.
Whoa, wait, what? They actually...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And they expected nobody to notice.
This is a nationally watched television show. They don't have editors on this stuff? Like,
No. Here's the thing. Here's what I think. Here's my theory. They didn't... Because they've done this before to other people who didn't have the same sort of following that Mr. Jonathan Coulton does.
Yeah.
And it just happens that I think part of it stems from the fact that he is sort of an internet guy. Like, I mean, he did that thing a week where he did released a song a week for 2 weeks and released them first free on the internet and just sort of did that and, really sort of got up his geek internet rocker cred. And I think I don't know why, maybe they just, heard it on YouTube or something, or were looking for versions or whatever reason, and they said, he's just some guy on the internet, no one will know. Oops.
Lol, nope.
But so, now, as the sort of internet, here's the funny thing. The internet is where, a lot of people go who'd like to take music for free. But apparently, if you take someone's music, say it's your own, and then, I kid you not, try to sell it. They are selling their version on iTunes for money.
Oh, that's problematic.
The internet rises up in a righteous fury. So yeah, they sort of have been doing half silent PR, half saying, oh, well, we're going to give him exposure, except they haven't publicly credited him at all, really. They've sort of I guess when they say we want to give him exposure, I think more they mean that sort of like leave him out in the cold until he dies kind of exposure. I think is what.
And can I just point out that that's all that they would have had to do, because he released the single or the cover under Creative Commons, because obviously he didn't write the original Baby Got Back. But the way that Creative Commons works is you can take somebody else's song, mix it up, release it as a cover, and say, hey, I'm releasing this under Creative Commons. Obviously, it's not mine. It originally belongs to this person. And then, in exchange for you getting to do that, anybody else can take your cover and release it the same way under Creative Commons. You just have to say that's what you're doing. It's really not that hard, and it would have been free.
You have to attribute it to the people. I mean, this is like a high school student who doesn't understand how to cite their sources.
But there's some, like, and we'll add his blog to the show notes, because he actually explained, like, the sort of weird legal darker gray area this is in because of that whole Creative Commons thing. Like, you know, it's like they might have even, like, stolen, like, the actual background track. Like, there's a duck quack he uses in place of expletives, and he's like, and he, you know, he has people, like, the internet, the whole internet. You know,
all of those tubes.
The internet as an organism
is like analyzing this, going, yeah, we think that sounds like his, like, you know, his track. But you know what? Like, I mean, he's got a reason to be rip roaring pissed. I mean, he's angry, but he is channeling it in such a beautiful way. Like, instead of, you know, shaking his fist angrily, this is what he did. So he re-released his cover, and he's calling it Baby Got Back in the style of Glee. And yes.
Meta.
Yes. And then what he's doing is the proceeds from that, like, after, like, iTunes gets its cut and Sir Mix-a-Lot gets his cut, he's taking the proceeds after all that sort of, you know, stuff that has to go to other people by law, you know, and by courtesy. He's donating the proceeds to two charities, which are sort of in line with the message of the show that should be there, is the VH1 Save the Music Foundation and the It's Better Project. So, as far as, like, being classy about it, he's been very classy. And, you know, and you guys said, you know, like, the things they should have done. They should have contacted him. Which is funny, because in preparation for this show, I had hopped on our Twitter account and, you know, sort of said, you know, just tweeted him. And I hadn't expected a reply. I just thought, well, I'd at least ask him, is it okay if we play a little bit of your song? Because we want to talk about it. And he replied back. He's like, oh, yeah, that's all right, but I'm not sure about the legality since it's Mix-a-Lot's song. And then I said, oh, well, I think we're covered by fair use since we're commenting on it. We're just going to use a short bit. And he was like, and I also said, I just thought we'd ask. He said, oh, you're polite, unlike some people I know.
Hint.
Hint.
Oh, burn!
He's been, you know, I find it somewhat reminiscent of, like, when Conan O'Brien kind of got screwed over, like that. You can tell the person is angry, but they're being really classy about it. So I kind of wish I still watched Glee so I could stop watching Glee in protest. But I gave up on that show.
But I don't wish I was still watching Glee. Yeah. Glee, I mean, we talked about that a little bit in preparation for this show. It's the fact that Glee is problematic on a whole lot of levels that aren't just stealing people's stuff and not crediting it.
Well, so here's...
I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Ryan Murphy is the worst. Capital T, capital W, the worst.
Well, here's the thing. Glee had so much potential as a show. So here's what we can do.
Oh, absolutely.
If people want to, like, help Mr. John Colton, go buy his song on iTunes, give it a good rating. Not something he's necessarily encouraged, but something I think might be good to do. You know, maybe go over to the Glee version, give it a not good rating. Maybe say, hey, they totally ripped off this other guy. Plenty of people are doing it, but it would, you know, just help bump that song down.
It adds up over time. Yeah.
And if you know, if you still, but hey, I want to watch Glee. Maybe we can tell you some of the things of why maybe you want to move away from the show Glee.
Oh yeah, jeez. There's so many.
In our opinion, obviously, we're not like
well, I mean,
the pop culture police. Well, we're the self-appointed pop culture police, but.
But I mean, everyone is these days anyway.
Well,
and like
here's
True.
our 2 cents or 6 cents. I guess we're all putting in. Anywho, take it away.
semantics.
Becca, you had some stuff about. Can you explain to us why he is the worst?
The worst. Basically, I think Glee is a show that started out trying to be like, oh, look how cool and progressive and liberal and edgy we are. We have all of these people from all of these different backgrounds, and we're being cool about it, and we like gay people, and we like people who aren't white, and we're really cool. And that could have actually been cool if they hadn't wanted to like beat us over the head with how cool it was, and in the process of doing that, turn it into a big joke. I really felt like as the show progressed, all of the humor about gay people and about people of color and about women and about everything got to the point where it wasn't a subversive, funny poke at the people who say stupid things and mean them, and it just became actually problematic. I don't know how many Asian jokes you can make before you start being racist about Asians, you know? Where do you draw that line?
There's a point where it stops becoming satire and starts becoming, I guess, self-referencing satire without meaning to, you know? Like, it becomes so absurd that it ends up parodying itself without realizing. And there's so much other concerning things, like the way that the characters are portrayed, like the way the gay characters are portrayed, that as not being able to have healthy relationships with people, not being able to have positive relationships with their families. It's all very insidiously subtle, you know. And in some cases, it's more overt than others. But that kind of stuff adds up, especially when you're one of the most watched shows on television. That starts to become problematic for people who are looking for role models, especially kids who are watching the show.
Well, and you have like the idea that like I give first seasons are always a little rough because people haven't, so you kind of expect people to be a little cardboard cut out in the first season. Certain shows come out strong in the first episode. I put on my nerd goggles for a little bit, but like Firefly, that first episode, you watch and you go, I don't know this person's backstory, but even if the actor doesn't know this person's backstory, they're acting like they know, like this person has a history. So other shows come out, and when it first comes out, people seem a little cardboard cut out because the writers aren't quite sure what they're doing, the actor isn't quite sure where this character's going, so it's sort of hard for them to, make that person a fully realized person. But by the time you're into, the second season, you should kind of have this stuff down. So, like, if during the first half of your first season, your gay character is the gay character, okay, maybe. I'll give you that, because, like I said, people are finding the role still. But after that, you got to give these people something more. Depth,
realism, a modicum of realism, which I realize is difficult to come by in a show that's designed like Glee.
Well, I mean, yeah, because the idea of a musical, like, people don't burst out into song and dance.
You don't?
Oh, my friends.
You've never been in a car with these
choreographed song and dance.
Yeah, well.
Oh, okay, I'm talking to theater people, so I should.
That's true. Okay. Having done musical theater in high
my
school.
shopping cart, I'm not gonna lie. Yep.
But it's like,
I mean, that was sort of my thing that I loved about Glee when I first watched it, was I was like, okay, everybody else in the world hates Rachel Berry, but I was Rachel Berry when I was 16, and this is awesome. And then even I had to admit that I hated Rachel Berry after a while. She stopped being me, and she just became sort of a caricature of this awful human being.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, I think rested on that being liberal and progressive. Like, oh, 1 million moms says we shouldn't, people shouldn't watch us. And granted, you want me to come watch a show? 1 million moms saying this show promotes homosexuality. I'm like, I'm going to watch it just to spite them because I think they're kind of shrill, shrieky,
Awful.
But then you got to give me something more to stick around than just you pissed off conservatives, because that's getting pretty easy.
Yeah, there's not a lot to go on. And certainly you need staying power if you're going to be a competitor in the media market. But I think that talking about...
And a huge part of...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think a huge part of staying power in television is character development, which is a real problem for Glee. The characters go through the same... Like, they learn a lesson, and then the next show they learn the same lesson again. They don't retain anything. And I think that's really particularly true in the case of Finn, who, as I said when we were preparing for the show, I feel is the definitive, nice guy on television. The idea that he's supposed to be the great guy, but really he's kind of a jerk all the time to everyone, and particularly to the women in his life. So, there's that.
Insidious.
But yeah,
to talk about how easy it is to tick off conservatives.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm pretty sure you've all heard, because we had first it was the debt ceiling, then it was the fiscal cliff, and now it's the debt ceiling again, or am I getting my cliff ceiling metaphors mixed up?
Yeah, I think we vacillate between the two.
we keep hearing from conservatives that we have no money. The sort of tagline is, we can't keep borrowing money to pay for things that we can't afford. And while conservative economics is a little, it's like, I can sort of see kind of the point, but deficit spending during economic downturns, there's all sorts of back and forth. But, if you're going to be the people saying, we should stop wasting money, why don't you stop spending $520 an hour on an attorney to defend DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, which is a law that says that the federal government will not recognize same-sex marriage. So, yeah, they're paying one Paul Clement $520 an hour to come up with arguments for keeping DOMA on the books, for trying to stop same-sex marriage from being recognized by the federal government. And some of his arguments have been convoluted, might be a good word. Here, I'll quote from his argument. In short, gays and lesbians are one of the most influential, best connected, best funded, and best organized interest groups in modern politics, and have attained more legislative victories, political power, and popular favor in less time than virtually any other group in American history. Gays and lesbians not only have the attention of lawmakers, they are winning many legislative battles, and the importance of this factor in the analysis cannot be gainsaid. So essentially he's saying that because they've come such a long way in such a short period of time, we shouldn't let them be recognized by federal marriage statutes.
I don't follow. Come again.
Yeah.
How does that make any sense? Like, so many of these advances in legislation are amazing, partly because they're coming on legislation that's already come before it. This is like when Title IX came out, which says that there can be no unequal distribution of funding to federal programs based on gender, which is all too often instead reduced to being about sports teams instead of schools in general. That was built off of architecture from Title VII, which was it came out of the civil rights movement. So the reason these things are advancing so rapidly is because we have the previous architecture in place in our own legal system, and because we get things done faster now. We're more vocal, and it's easier to spread ideology through the internet and exchange ideas. So that's not a surprise.
demographics are changing. Like
Absolutely.
even if they weren't, let's pretend that we didn't have a legal framework, that just it was hard fighting, that's not, like they've been just gaining victories. Because they're winning, we can't let them win?
Yeah, that seems pretty problematic to me.
But if you're gonna say that we shouldn't be spending money, I mean, because like Barack Obama, one of the things he did when his view evolved was he said, yeah, we're not going to spend any more money to defend DOMA in court. And I would think, if you're a hardcore, fiscal conservative, that would seem like not wasting more money on something that's losing hardcore and is pretty much, like, if you just look at the demographics, is fading away. But no, they are defending marriage.
Well, they gotta stick to their guns on something. Oh, that was that turn of phrase is in poor taste, I think.
Yeah.
Well, but like, okay, so the idea is that it's the religious right that's doing this,
Yeah.
But the thing is, even in religious circles, they're losing ground.
They absolutely are, and quickly. I think that what the GOP fails to realize when they think about Christians as a group is that Christians are not all fundamentalist Christians, and a lot of them are young people, and the majority of young people are socially liberal, and they need to start approaching their legislation that way if they don't want to become obsolete. Christians are not all Ann Coulter. They're not all nutbags, if you will.
Well, it's like when New York was passing its Marriage Equality Act, there was one conservative senator, Grisanti. I'm probably butchering his last name. I apologize. But he had said that he was, he's Catholic, he's conservative, but what he said was, a man can be wiser today than yesterday, but there can be no respect for a man if he has failed to do his duty. He said, I cannot deny a human being, a taxpayer, a worker, the people of my district, and across the state of New York, and those who make this great state what it is, the same rights that I and my wife have. I might be butchering that quote, but basically he said, he was one of those people who said, I don't agree with gay marriage, but I can't think of a legal reason why they can't get gay married. And this is the thing when it comes to that religious argument, and here's where I get in trouble sometimes, because this is what happens. Someone says, I believe that the Bible condemns homosexuality. And I say, okay, that, if you want to believe that, I think you're wrong, but, you believe what you want to believe. And then they say, I want laws to be based on my belief. And then I go, whoa, wait a second. If you have a belief, that's fine. You can have that belief. But once you want laws to be based on it, you have to come at me with proof. So if you don't want to start having to prove your Bible, your interpretation of your Bible, don't try to make a law based on it. Because that's when I will start asking you, okay, so if we're going to base things on biblical law, shall we, go to those lovely bits of the Bible that says a woman must marry her rapist, or if she's not a virgin on her wedding night, she has to be stoned to death, or, we are not allowed to eat pork, or we're not allowed to wear a cloth that's of, two mixtures or plant crops next to each other.
Or work on the Sabbath.
So basically you turn into President Jed Bartlett.
Yeah.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes. I do. And then I get told that I'm attacking religion, and I'm like, no. I said you're allowed to have your beliefs, but once you want to base far-reaching legislation on that belief, you've got to have something besides, well, it's in my book. Because it's
yeah.
And that, this is not just one person. It doesn't affect one person. It affects an entire nation. And you cannot do that without finding common ground with everyone else. I mean, that's partially what we were theoretically founded on. And you can bet your bippy that if someone else said, well, it says in the Quran that this is something that I need to do.
Oh, God!
And now I think that we should pass legislation that says it. Like, New Age crusade.
The world would explode.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing.
And I like that you said theoretically founded on, because I'm pretty sure that the separation of church and state was a thing. Am I wrong about that?
Well, but here's the thing.
You could fool me
I'm
these
pretty
days.
sure.
No, but see, the thing is,
I
people
know,
want
I
that
know.
all to be, like, sort of semi-permeable in one direction. They
Yeah.
don't want their church to be taxed, but they want their beliefs to be taught in schools, i.e., creationism. They want their morality taught as how it's supposed to go. Like, and the thing that I think gets people is like, well, if we allow same-sex marriage, then we have to normalize homosexual sex. And it's like, here's the thing. One, let's talk about sex for just a second here. So, any act you can conceive of between two homosexuals, between a guy and a guy or a girl and a girl, guess what? Same-sex couples do the same thing. There was a lovely court case called Lawrence v. Texas, where basically Texas had said, they had caught two guys together and they were trying to, under the current law, you could say, well, they're having gay sex. That's illegal. And, well, one of the arguments that came up is like, so sodomy, and this is, it's like, sodomy is illegal. And it was like, well, this is something like straight couples do. Is it illegal for them? Well, no. Then why should it be legal for gay couples? I don't know. Like, that's this idea that, and I mean, these are the conservatives. These are the guys who are supposed to be about small government.
Right, that's the
sex.
killer. Like that's the thesis statement that we hear all the time, over and over and over again during campaign seasons. Like, small government, we want them out of our lives, out of our homes, but we want them in our bedrooms. You can't have it both ways.
Well, I will say this for all of the conservatives that I actually know personally, as opposed to the ones I see on my television, which are very different, that most of them really, really do think, I want you to stay out of my pocketbook and out of my personal life. Which is not what I agree with on the pocketbook portion. But, I'm okay with you thinking that. What I'm not okay with you thinking is that you get to make decisions based on the Bible. And, I mean, my grandfather's a priest. I'm not anti-Christianity in any way, but I am anti-allowing my Christianity to dictate the laws in my country. That's not okay with me.
Well, there's a point where it stops being about religion and religious freedom, which I'm all for. I'm all for religious freedom. I'm fine with having Mormons in our country and having Scientologists and, whatever anyone wants to believe. Sure, whatever makes you happy. But as long as it doesn't hurt other people or impede on their lives and their happiness. And there's a point where this whole thing stops being about religious freedom and becomes bullying. Like, straight up bullying.
But if you don't let people bully, then you're going against their freedom of religion, Simon.
I'm not being intolerant enough of their religious need to be intolerant.
But that's the weird argument that comes up all the time. It's like, if you allow same-sex marriage, then churches will not be able to stand against same-sex marriage. But then I have to ask the question: there are churches who want to perform same-sex marriages.
Yeah.
So who's fighting for their religious freedom? Oh yeah, that's right. It's the evil, awful, secularist, baby-eating liberals.
Citation.
Speaking of eating
needed.
babies.
Oh man, that might be one of our worst segues yet. But so sort of sticking with these slightly religious. That's all, folks. Religiously themed topics. We're going to talk about some very bizarre legal hypocrisy from a Catholic hospital. So yeah. St. Thomas More Hospital in Cannon City. Yeah. So what happened is, this is a sad awful story. So a woman came into the hospital. She was vomiting, short of breath, and she passed out, and they paged her doctor. Or they paged a doctor. This doctor doesn't answer the page. She dies. She was carrying twins. She was carrying twins. And the husband sued the hospital. And now this is a Catholic hospital. And in part of their defense in this malpractice suit, their lawyer makes the argument that, well, fetuses aren't people. And, I mean, so in case you don't know, I don't know how you wouldn't know, but, maybe you avoid the news because you want to not be depressed. That's possible. But the Catholic Church has sort of been on the forefront of this, changing the legal definition of a person. They want fetuses to be people. And so I understand the lawyer's argument. What I don't understand, if I'm a Catholic hospital that has lovely things saying like we're run by biblical principles, why you would have a lawyer make those arguments on your behalf.
Yeah. That seems counterintuitive.
Well, I think the reason is because they don't want to pay for having killed 3 people. They want to pay for having killed 1 person. But it's hypocrisy in a big, scary, awful way.
Well,
and they suck.
Well, I would think they sort of understand that law is built on previous law. Like we were saying with the way the gay marriage debate is, their legal standing is built on previous legal standing. It's moving. So if you want to change the law, why would you argue that for any other reason but the money?
Yeah, because otherwise you're just shooting yourself in the foot. You're weakening your own argument, except for the purpose of winning your current argument. That doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make a damn bit of sense.
That's just so frustrating. Like, why would you do that?
Well, and
I was saying when we were... Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was saying when we were first discussing this article a week or 2 ago that it made me feel a little bit like a hypocrite too, because I was hearing this awful story and being like, this is terrible. How can these people say that this was that these fetuses aren't people? And then I turned around and I was like, wait, I'm confused because I believe in choice. And I guess for me, I came to a place where I was like, okay, but being pro-choice is about being pro-choice. It's not saying these people who were wanted and were viable and had parents who wanted to love and care for them don't count. It's saying if they hadn't been wanted, that's a different different story.
Abortion is a big issue in this country right now, and again, it's mostly religiously driven. And the thing of it is, it's like, what gets me about the abortion debate is, I'm willing to come to the table and say, okay, we want to reduce abortions. All right, let's reduce abortions. And the other side says, we'll make them all illegal. And I say, you do realize that, like, people still get abortions when you do that, except they're far more dangerous, and you have, the mother dying as well. So that's not really pro-life. And I say, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we increase sex education, increase access to contraception, and then I'm told that I'm, crazy or something. That I'm causing sexual immorality and teenagers to run out and have sex. And I'm like, you don't understand how the world works. Because teenagers have been having sex for forever. This isn't a new thing. There's a reason we had shotgun weddings. People have been having premarital sex for a long time.
They're called hormones. People have them. They act on them.
Well, and the idea, when these rules were written, I was discussing this particular story with my mother-in-law, who's a wonderful lady and very smart, and she had said that, talking about, because sex used to be a decision that kind of carried a very fatal weight for women, because we had a very high mortality rate for mothers. They would die during pregnancy, die in childbirth. So it used to be like that we had that stereotypical idea of what sex ed became, where sex equals death. Well, sex sort of used to equal death. But we also, during that time when these rules were put down, women were getting married. Like, it was pretty much you bled, you wed. So this idea of waiting until marriage, you were 14, 15, back in ye olden times, sure. But these aren't those times.
Right. Spoiler alert. Time advances. Societies evolve.
What?
Oh wait, I can't use
I didn't
evolution.
get that far in the season yet.
I can't say evolve because that's a bad word.
Oh.
But again, it's this idea that you can't change society. Like now we have advances in our understanding. Like, because now we don't get married that young because we realize people need to grow up. We have advances in medical technology, that prevents pregnancy. We have condoms. We have education. And these are the things that have studies and lots of numbers behind them that say this reduces unplanned pregnancies. And like you said in the story, these were kids who were wanted. People, unless under extreme circumstances, do not abort wanted children. Those are usually the life of the mother. But there's another story from a while back. Did you guys hear about the one where a Catholic hospital in Ireland, I believe, there was a woman, her child was no longer, the child was dying, and there was no way to save the child.
Mm-hmm.
But they would not perform an abortion because... And so she died as well. And it's one of those things where it's like, this isn't being pro-life. And that's... This is what I've gotten into arguments with certain people on this idea of saying, I'm not willing to call them pro-life anymore. I'm just going to start calling them anti-choice, because it seems at least the loudest voices within the movement, they're against abortion, just anything. And they're not even life of the mother sort of exceptions. They're against cheaper access to medical care. They're against the measures I said that prevent abortion. They're against doing anything for the child once it's born. It's that's not pro-life. Life is more than just breeding. If you want to say that we want to prevent abortion, we want to save every life. If that's your stance, quit being so hypocritical about it.
Yeah, you have to
also
actually
stop supporting the death penalty and putting guns in schools.
Right.
Seems like there's a lot of overlap there.
There's a lot of cognitive dissonance between what those different policies. And you can't just say, I support... I want you to not have aborted your child, and then once that child comes into the world, you have to be able to... willing to provide services and legislation that supports the parents of those children, usually single mothers. You have to be able to willing to throw money towards education for the kid. What is more important at that point? What is this really about when you boil it down? And I wonder if anyone has actually had this conversation with people who are anti-choice, if we want to go with that. I wonder if anyone's actually sat them down and said, "Hang on a second. What do they do after that? What in the cases where these children do they get put up for adoption? Do they get left in orphanages? Is that better?"
Well, that's the thing. Speaking of being property of the state, even for a short period of time, is not a great thing for a kid. Nothing against the people who work in those state homes for kids. They're a lot of hardworking people, but unfortunately, because this sort of conservative movement that sort of has most of the pro-lifeness with it also doesn't want to spend money on anything that has the state's hand in it, It's like, okay, so if you have a kid whose parents can't take care of it, who are either abusive, neglectful, or just wholly unequipped, you put these kids in these situations that perpetuates a cycle of poverty, which of course leads to less education, which leads to more unplanned pregnancies, which leads to more abortions. I don't know. It seems like you said, sitting down with people. I try. Like, I'm one of those silly people who gets into arguments on the internet, and I try not to be. I try not to be a bully or blunt or overly sarcastic when I'm actually trying to convince someone. But
I know that feel, bro. I know that feel.
But it's hard. It's hard to explain to people because, again, there's this, not entirely, but there is a large religious component. And you have people who say, well, the Bible says, or more accurately, it's my preacher, pastor, whoever says the Bible says. Because, people who say, if you read the Bible, you'd understand my point. And I'm like, I've read the Bible. I'm not getting your point.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think there's that at that point. It's a little sad because it seems to me that many of those people just don't have anything else to believe because they're so accustomed to. There's something very comforting about religion, and I admire that. I admire people who can take solace in their faith. And if that's what works for you, if prayer or consulting with a priest is what helps you, get through your life, great. But what's terrifying, I think, to many of these people is that admitting that they don't agree with some of these statements or challenging those ideas is like admitting that that central part of their life, where so much stability comes from, is wrong and fallible. And that's terrifying. And understandably so. So in a way, I mean, I could, if that's the case, if that's really the underlying problem, then I can completely understand that and sympathize with those people. But at the same time, I also want to tell them to, cowboy up and face those things, because life is not always that easy. We're never going to be handed all of our answers on a silver platter. Sometimes, in order to move on, we have to confront and challenge our preconceptions, because that's how we learn.
And I would say that, a lot of Christians in American culture these days are, as you say, cowboying up. There was the Pew Research Center for the People and the Press study poll about same-sex marriage conducted in October 2011, which showed a majority of Christians being in favor of same-sex marriage, a slim majority, but a great increase from even a year or two before when they conducted the same poll. So, I mean, there's definitely a shift happening. It is happening. It's just slow. It's frustratingly slow. And I'm sure abortion falls into the same, maybe slightly different, but, you have people changing, you have people learning and evolving, and the internet's a huge piece of that, because people have more access to more information and more people who think differently than them. And I think that, as frustrating as it is right now, if we give it a little more time and keep fighting the good fight, we're going to get there, wherever there may be.
It does require kind of a big paradigm shift on the part of the rest of the U.S., though. I think primarily because of this, as we've mentioned earlier, the separation of church and state, which isn't really there. So many of our rites and rituals relating to government are intrinsically tied to religious practices. It's even on our money, So until that starts to shift, which will take time, it's going to be an uphill battle.
This is why I'm a fan of doubt. Because here's the thing, people will say, I am certain that this is the way it is. But, I mean, I've been certain and wrong. I'm sure we've all had experience, Man, I'm sure I left my keys in my coat pocket. I'm positive. And then you find them on the kitchen counter, and you're like, obviously I was wrong. Take that out to the idea of like people who are certain that the Bible says something that it may or may not say. Because what's interesting, like, is the things people are certain the Bible says are certain that it should be believed, even without understanding the context of and what it might have been said. Like that certainty, if people aren't willing to say, I could be wrong, and that's a hard thing to say. I mean, it's hard to say, I could be wrong. But being willing to say, okay, what if I'm wrong? Yeah, if I'm wrong about abortion, if I'm wrong about my stance on sex education, like, could it be that more sex education will prevent abortion? Well, maybe I should look into this. And if you do that, you look into it and you see, well, the states that have more comprehensive sex ed actually have fewer STDs, fewer unwanted pregnancies, fewer abortions. And the idea with the faith community on abortion, like, it's not like Catholics aren't having abortions. They are. It's happening within those communities. But it's like this sort of secret they don't want to talk about. And I don't know if there's a study out there on like the voting habits of like religious affiliated women who've had abortions. Like, do they vote that way?
That would be an interesting bit of data to check out. Actually,
and this is one of those issues that gets a lot of people very passionate, and I can understand why. Like, and this is one of those things where, like I said, it's hard not to want to yell at people and say, like, sometimes when I'm in this debate, I'm like, I want to go, listen, moron. Here's the facts. These are the numbers. These are the studies. Listen to me. But once you yell at someone, once you say you're an idiot, you're a moron, they get psychologically defensive, and you've lost the argument already. Because, like Simon, if I were to say, man, only an idiot would, like, Simon, you must be an idiot for thinking X. Well, obviously, if you admit that you're wrong, you have to admit you're an idiot. And who wants to do who like, there's psychological defense mechanisms.
Yeah, wasn't there's something that's I remember reading this, that like our brains actively reject information that we think is counter to our previously established worldview. Because like we that's genetics. That's science, and you can look it up. We are all petulant children at the end of the day when it comes down to decision making and such.
So I don't know. This is one of those, but like, back to sort of the original story. Like, what happened here was the church, which has been on this part of this argument, saying that the fetus is a person. When it came down to it, this is again why I sort of shy away from calling the sort of whole movement pro-life, because you have people who will be against abortion until it's inconvenient for them, because there's story again and again. Like, there was a while back, there was the representative from Tennessee, Scott Dargilis. I'm probably butchering his name. Sorry on his behalf. But basically, he was very pro-life. He was a doctor and everything. And then there was evidence of him trying to get his mistress to have an abortion. And that's when it gets away from this idea of being able to call yourself pro-life and just being, it's not the woman's choice.
Yeah. And not only that, like, way to get caught out. Like, you can't have it both ways. Like, everyone should, no one should be able to have access to abortions, except me. Except when it affects me and my life.
And that's the thing, right there. When it affects me.
Yeah, when it's inconvenient for me, basically.
I don't know. This is one of those things where it's like, if people want to talk about, like, the difference between early abortion and late abortion, that's a debate we can have. But the thing is, you can't start saying that we're going to... we can't outlaw late-term abortion if you keep spending all this time restricting early abortion, because what happens to a late-term abortion, like, is if you've got the roadblocks before you to get there, like you have to have the transvaginal ultrasound, we're going to calculate the date of your conception 2 weeks earlier than it possibly actually happened, and then we're going to, close down any abortion clinic close to you. We're going to say that it can't be, there's no way it can be funded by anything that maybe even once rubbed up against a federal dollar. Like, all these roadblocks you put in the way, it just, again, and it comes down to that idea of taking your viewpoint and saying everyone must subscribe to my viewpoint because I have this book that says so. Even though I would like to put a challenge out to anyone who can find a passage in the Bible that actually addresses abortion. Because having studied it myself, the only thing close to it, like, is a passage that says that if two men are fighting and they strike a woman and she, various translations, some say she loses the child or it's born early, you have to pay the father 200 shekels or something like that. So that's the closest thing I can find to anything even mentioning born people. So maybe take a step back and realize we can find common ground. You want to prevent abortions? I want to prevent unplanned pregnancies. Let's go with the stuff that we have science and data that says it works. And we can all live in a happy utopia.
I can get on board with that plan. It's my stamp of approval.
Man, we're all just visitors on this spaceship called Earth floating through the universe, man. No, not that after-school special, but I would like people to get along without trying to rip each other's heads off now and again. Well, to kind of close out real quick, I know we usually do a trifecta, but I just wanted to poke in this really neat
we got
idea.
some housekeeping stuff.
Yeah. So, this Misrepresentation is a documentary about how the mainstream media continues to do extreme disservice to women in positions of power and influence in the United States. And they have a website which has a lot of good resources to talk about equity and gender issues. And there is a campaign that they are going on for the Super Bowl, which is quite timely. So last year they got this out, this hashtag, which is not buying it, and it's used to call out sexism in the media, primarily in Super Bowl ads, which were pretty fantastically misogynistic or sexist, and pretty amazingly in high numbers. GoDaddy, of course, has been sexualizing the heck out of Danica Patrick. Why she's sponsoring a web hosting service, I still don't know. But if you are watching the Super Bowl and you happen to see a commercial that makes you go, man, that's sexist. That is unbelievably sexist.
So if you happen to see a commercial, period.
Yeah, that too. Unfortunately, these days. Yeah, there's one that's up here on the website that's for this thing Voco. I guess it's an audio service. It looks like a speaker thing. I can't even tell from the ad, because the ad is like a pair of speakers and then a giant pair of glossy lips that says oral is better.
What?
and it looks like they're about to like clamp down on the speakers in a very sexual way. It's a little concerning.
So,
and that's an understatement. So yeah, check it out. Check out misrepresentation.org/not-buying-it. And if you happen to be watching commercials or see anything in the media, I would greatly encourage you to tweet about it with that hashtag.
And one bit of housekeeping stuff. Back in episode 2, when we were talking about sexual assault, I had made a comment akin to it used to be legal to rape your wife in the United States, but then we changed the laws, and now it's, we understand that a spouse can rape their spouse. And I thought that I was correct in saying that was a thing of the past, that that spousal rape was fully prosecutable. I was wrong. Just now, the state of Washington is mulling over changes of how it defines sexual assault. Somewhat thanks in part to their looking over the laws due to the change in same-sex marriage. So, yeah, I was wrong. 49 out of 50. You gotta cut me a break, but yeah, I was very wrong. I'm sorry.
Oy.
So, yeah.
I forgive you. I forgive you, Jordan.
Well, thank you.
I don't forgive our legislators, though.
No, I don't.
Nope.
Nope.
All of my nope.
Yeah, but so yeah, and we're, I'm enjoying the Facebook and the Twitter from people. So keep liking and commenting and telling us if we've messed up.
Yeah, feel free to call us out on our stuff if we make a mistake. Or if you have an opinion that differs from ours. Because discussion is important.
Yes. We're nice people, I promise.
Sometimes.
Okay, well, yeah, sometimes. All right.
I'm not saying anything.
We noticed.
All right. Well, so enjoy your Super Bowl experience. But
Puppy Bowl!
Puppy Bowl!
Sports ball.
Your entire, if you do the math, 11 minutes of the actual gameplay. The rest of it is either ads or people mulling on the field. But have fun, and, be nice to each other, please.
Oh my god,
Make-
please.
Guys.
Make the world a less facepalm-worthy place.
We hope.
And then we can all go on that spaceship that Simon was talking about.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Have a good evening, morning, whatever time you're listening to this.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. We out. If you have a news story, political blunder, or pop culture tidbit that makes you facepalm, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at facepalmreport@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter at facepalmreport, and we're also on Facebook.